Alright, so today we got a little bit of a instructional slash um, what you can do kind of video. Uh, mine a haircut. This is my COVID cut. I just buzzed that shit off now, man. So I'm working at home. I don't see anybody, so I get tired of it. So today we're gonna mess with the STI intake, and we're gonna do some restoration, I guess you could say, on it. Um, as far as the engine goes and stuff, I won't talk too much about that. I'm still waiting for it to come in. I'm hoping by the end of January this month, 2022, that it'll come in, and I can get to work on it. If it comes sooner, then great. I have called IEG already once or twice to go over some questions. They were very helpful and whatnot, so I'm gathering some information there. Besides that, not too much has happened, so let's get over to this. Alright, so as we can see here, we have the red famous STI intake. This is off my 2006 STI, sitting pretty with no engine and becoming a collection of our storage collection here. Don't worry, soon. Um, so I want to restore this. Mine is actually in not that bad of condition compared to some of the ones I've actually seen. It's just faded in this case, and then once you start to get a little bit closer, you'll start to see some chipping. It wasn't as bad. I did some external cleaning on it, so that's why it's kind of worse as it used to be. It wasn't quite this bad, especially like this. This wasn't as bad, but I started to clean it a little bit, and it started to fall off. But I wanted to give a detailed video on this, as there really isn't much out there. There's a few guys. I think Subaru only has a video, but he kind of does a time-lapse process, and I wanted to talk about it in my way, just to put more content on there. We always could use more, right? So let's go over some of the stuff that I plan on using, right? So this is the product that everybody uses here. This is the VHT Wrinkle Plus. I did some research online, all the forums, watched other two YouTube videos, gone over all the details I could, and this is just pretty much the main product. Besides actually powder coating or doing something different, this seems to be the standard go-to. This guy's about 20 bucks, 10 bucks at AutoZone, Advanced Auto, O'Reilly's. O'Reilly's actually was the quickest. They had it next day. I just had to order online and picked it up the next day. At the time of this video, Amazon had it for like 15 bucks. So they're selling this stuff pretty high priced on Amazon, oddly, compared to AutoZone and stuff. Just an FYI. Next product we'll be using is this guy here. This is another product that everybody suggested online. This one allows, as you can see here, it basically just etches and primes in one easy step. But when you read the back, and I'll read it real quick to you guys, basically says prepares bare metal, aluminum, and fiberglass surfaces to promote maximum adhesion and smoothness of the top coat. So I think this is what everybody was recommending you put down as a primer. I think there's like a dark gray and a black color. I mean, obviously that shouldn't matter too much. You're putting a lot of coats on these, so this is just a primer to allow the paint to adhere to. And then the main guy here, so we'll set these aside, is this guy. So there's many ways you could probably do this, and there's more people out there that might have better ideas and faster ways of doing it, that know a lot more than I do. This is probably my first real time trying to remove paint for something to this degree, so I'm totally a noob to this. But I did some, again, research online. The big thing that I saw is anything with that word aircraft in it is basically extra potent in the sense of what it removes, versus basic stuff. But in general, you just need some kind of paint remover that's specifically an actual paint remover and not some kind of, thinner or something like that. This stuff's pretty nice, and I've already tested it out a little bit, so that's what I'm going to show you here. So I tested it out back here, and it looks weird, so ignore how it looks, because I obviously tested it, cleaned it, and then it sat there, so it created that foam. But as you can see, for the most part, I put it on there for about 20 minutes in this area, and I thought I might have to use a scraper like this or something. Hello, scraper. scraper, and it came right off pretty quickly. But in the end of the day, what I ended up doing was, here's my Harbor Freight tool cleaner. I just took an old bucket that I use for collecting all my yucky fluids that fall out there, and I just took some of the Harbor Freight cleaning brushes that I use for cleaning most of my stuff, especially now that I'm putting new engine in there. And you can see the red paint on there. It came right off with these brushes, like super simple. And then I just took some water and I would spray some of it off and I would rub it. And really, I mean, this whole thing took me about 20 seconds or so to get as far as I did. So I'm assuming maybe a good half an hour of going at this thing and I'll be done. So it should be pretty quick. So once the first thing I'm going to do after I tested it, just to make sure it worked, I'm going to go through and plug all these little holes, every single orifice, every hole, with painter's tape. One of the main things it says is to avoid getting the leftover paint to drip in these areas, because it can become, stuck or hard. Or, I mean, if you think about it, if something gets in here, how are you really going to get it out, right? Dump this thing into diesel fuel or something like that and let it sit. Or maybe, I don't know, but you don't really want things to fall in all these little orifices around here. So you'll do that. You'll probably have to peel the paint off and the painter's tape, peel it off and put it back on again for when you actually paint it. So that's the annoying side of it. But that's the plan. I'm just gonna strip this off. I thought about this at first. I almost didn't do this, and then I kind of forgot that I ordered the red wrinkle paint anyway. But I was like, well, maybe I should just leave it the way it is. It really isn't that bad compared to most people. I didn't like the fading, but the paint wasn't that bad. But I was like, let's just make it fresh. Why not? Let's do a good job. Oh, there is one other thing. There's a few suggestions that I saw that you could have this thing sandblasted. So if you have a sandblaster or something like that, that might actually work out pretty well. Or a local shop might be able to do that for you relatively cheap if you don't want to do the paint remover method. But let's go with it. I think the other thing that I was reading online is that this paint here, this Wrinkle Plus, it's obviously not an exact match to the original red that used to be there. But I think they said it, not that it was brighter, but it stood out a little more compared to this red. Like, I don't want to say it's as red as as this, or as this Killer Bee thing, which is not even the right one. But it's definitely a little bit brighter of a red by a small amount. So I'm not too worried about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this. I'm gonna get the paint removed. I'm gonna mark it off. I'm gonna mark it up, tape it up, get the paint removed, degrease it and stuff, and then I'll show you what it looks like when the paint's all off, and then I'll show you how to coat it and how to get it ready for the paint. Alright guys, a couple days have passed since I started doing the breakdown on that. Let me adjust this real quick. So I started doing the paint removal on that intake, and that shit's a pain in the butt. let me tell you that shit. That's a pain in the butt. Where's that stuff at? So this stuff right here, right? This stuff we talked about, this Rust-Oleum acrylic or aircraft remover stuff. It's not that it didn't work. It just didn't work as good as I thought it would. As good as I thought. I just didn't. Its property to remove the paint wasn't quite what I was expecting. It worked, but you had to include a scrubber. So let me kind of show you my little setup. I have this little tub here, and I have these little Harbor Freight. Get some focus here. These are little wire brushes, right? I had two different sizes. I had this little brass one. Maybe, yes, no, possible. This little brass one, along with this little steel one here, and it was fine. It worked to do that, but it was a pain because when you sprayed that stuff on, it kind of like fizzled down the sides, and it made it difficult for the got these things on. Made it difficult for the paint remover stuff to stay in one area, but it did when you sprayed more coats. But I felt like I was wasting a lot of that product. So I'd probably stick with something more liquid based. Maybe not the Rust-Oleum stuff. I mean, you could probably research some better products out there. I'll put one up that I found that the internet recommended that was better to take off. And I'm gonna be a little honest. I'm not gonna show it to you because I'm a little embarrassed, but I did leave some of the paint on there when I started spraying the primer. That's why I have this stuff on here. So that stuff it just took too long. I have probably 5 hours of so trying to remove that paint with that stuff, and I had to spray a little bit because I couldn't spray the whole thing because it would dry too fast and then it would just be useless. And then it was hard to clean, and when you would scrub with the little brush, you couldn't really tell if the paint was coming off or not, so I could only do small areas at a time. And it just took too long. So I did about a 90% of a job. It came out pretty good. There were some little crevices here and there and some other small parts that I left. I got some of it off, but I left it there, so I'm not too worried about that. So the next thing I'm doing is the primer. Let me show you that real quick. Alright, so I got this little setup here. I just took a little bit of an old board here and a backsplash. As you can see, it kind of sprays. So you want to have something in the back to catch the overspray, and then put it on 2 pieces of wood, so it's not exactly on the ground, and that you can pivot it when you need to. But you'll put about 2 to 3 good coats, and to get into some of these corners here, like here and here, you're gonna have to lift this up on an angle and kind of spray downward at it, and then flip it over and spray. Like, you're gonna end up putting a bunch of coats on this just to get every single part. But I think it's good now. I think the primer's all set. So like I said, I was using this stuff here, the self-etching primer. And definitely wear some glasses if you're using that paint remover stuff, especially when you're using the scrub brush. That shit splatters. My whole back corner there is covered in red paint, and it gets all over my face, all over my clothes. And when you're using that primer, make sure you got some kind of mask. This is just an old 3M mask that I have. It's probably not the best, but it's better than nothing, because that primer really likes to aerate and spread everywhere. So make sure you wear a mask. So I'm going to get started on the Wrinkle Plus stuff and actually get that going, and hopefully I can get that done today and have it ready. I will say I'll put this video out soon instead of holding on to it, because I've been just kind of holding some videos on and waiting. But I do have some exciting news. I'll tell it here, and I won't say anything until I actually receive it, but the engine did ship. I should have it in the next week or so, so I'm really excited on that. Good morning again. So this will probably be the last part of the video as far as the intake goes. It's been a few days since the last time I did the prep for it and the painting, and unfortunately it did not come out the way I expected. Man, I'm tired looking. So I had a fun night last night. A little bit too many so it didn't turn out the way that I wanted to turn out. I'm just looking at it now. And I don't know, to me it's bad. So I mean, to others it might be okay, but to me it didn't do it, and I'll explain why and what I experienced throughout the whole process with it. So let me show you something that I learned, some of the things that I learned and what you can do. So yeah, here it is. Alright, so I'm not sure exactly if the camera's going to show it in the proper color. It kind of seems like it's coming through. When I do my edit, I'll try and make sure it shows it the exact way. But as you can see, this is not your typical Subaru red. First off, it's shiny. It's not really supposed to be shiny. It's supposed to be matte. I don't know how close I can get with the camera to show the wrinkle. But some spots, the wrinkle came through, like on the top here. But then when you just look at the back here, it's just flat. It just looks like paint. It's not special. Especially when you flip this around. I don't know, like I said, if you can tell, there's some wrinkle here. Yeah, you can kind of tell it wrinkled there. But then below, it didn't go at all. You know, like this, this is not wrinkle. This is part of the actual aluminum, because aluminum itself is not smooth or anything. It's got, you know, I guess you would just say, you know, it wasn't smoothed out, so it's got, you know, pores and stuff inside of it. And then, you know, like parts like this, it's just a smooth. So, and then the red really wasn't. I guess if you look at the cap, cap really is pretty authentic in the color of it. But when I looked online, it looked pretty close to the Subaru one with the other people that have done this. So I'd say first thing, number one, is I put too heavy a coating on. I think that was my problem. The box that I had set up, it didn't allow me to get a full farther away approach. And I think I just went too heavy because I was rushing it, and I should not have been rushing it. So that's the first thing. Take your time, go slow, light coats. More light coats is fine. I think the can says 3, but most people were doing 5 coats that were light. Number 2, that last coat is what's supposed to really help with the wrinkle. So you need to be careful with that last coat. Maybe mist it across and different things like that. That's something I would probably have done different. Take your time in between, let them settle. Number 3, don't leave this in cold. In Florida right now, it's like raining and stuff, but don't let this sit in the cold. I think the cold was another issue that didn't really let it sit properly. So to counter that, I can't obviously put this in the oven. If you read the back of the can, obviously your camera's not going to show it, but it basically says, and I'm going to read it real quick, to allow 24 hours to avoid contact, allow 48 hours or more before reassembling parts. To cure paint, bake in oven for 1 hour at 200 degrees. So to do that, and I think that helped the best because I started to see the wrinkles come out when I did this option. So I can't put it in my oven, and I'm not going to go buy a separate oven just to do this because it wouldn't fit. I took a big tote, something like this, and I dropped in the intake. And I had this little Amazon Basics heater. I forgot what it was, $16 or something like that I've had for a while, just for when it gets cold in the mornings. And I type on my computer all day, so this just blows in my hands because it gets annoying to type when your hands are cold. So I just threw this in here, just like that. And I took the lid. You can't put it on all the way because the sensor is gonna trip on the heater. You put a little gap like this, maybe a little bit more. And I just let it run. Now, sure, it's not efficient because this is like a 750 watt device running for an hour plus. And then I had my, laser thermal pew temperature thing here, and it kept an eye on it, and it sat around 150 degrees. It wasn't quite 200, but it's something, And once I started to do that, I really did notice a difference, and the wrinkles starting to pop out. So that's the other thing I should have done. I should not have let it sit for the 24 hours or so that I did. I should have put it straight into heat and let it sit in that heat for an hour or two, and then let it cure a little bit. So that's the last thing that I would have done. But I mean, does it look okay? Sure. I covered all the parts. And took my time. I put the masking tape across everything, and then I took an X-Acto knife, and I basically just cut all around all the corners, and it perfectly outlined every little surface. Now I'll come back because there's some little burrs and stuff, so I'll come back and fix the paint burrs. But I mean, this is what you're gonna see anyway when it's sitting in the car. It's just gonna be sitting like this, and it looks red, and it's fine. So eventually I'll probably switch to excuse me, the AMS intake when I go to the rotated turbo. So I'm not too worried about this. And now that I know how to take the paint off, I can just take the paint off again the proper way, and probably try again. So that's what I came to. Switching the camera. So yeah, that's what I learned. Does it work? Sure, it does work. At this point, I'm like $45 or so, $50 deep in cans and stuff. So it was kind of cheap to do. Definitely buy 2 cans. That's for sure. You can do it in 1 can because I went heavy, but I would say always buy 2 cans just in case. That's for sure. Choose a different paint remover than that Rust-Oleum stuff. I mean, you can use the Rust-Oleum stuff. It just was a pain. And make sure you tape off at least the intake parts and stuff like that when you're doing the paint remover, because you don't want that paint to get inside of the intake itself. So that's it. I learned my lesson. I'm gonna run with it. So you'll see this thing in future videos. The engine is shipped, like I said before. it should be here this coming week. I ordered the rest of the parts, so I'm ready. I'm ready to get this thing going. And we'll have plenty of videos coming for that. I'm gonna try and show as much of the process as I can, explain everything. So stay tuned for that. Talk to you guys later.